Welcome back. This is Daybreak. Thanks for staying with us. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Eric Wamumbi is the Madeira constituency lawmaker. Dr. Makali Mulu represents Kitui Central. Peter Pondo Kaluma is the MP, Homa Bay Town constituency. And Dispas Mukua joins us this morning, political and governance commentator here on the broadcast. And Honorable Eric, coming to you then, given that the president is in central Kenya now, and being the tradition, doesn't this erode the investment the Constitution makes in institutions? And then what will happen to the other regions in the country as well? Must they require the presence of the head of state for them to get development goodies?
Thank you, Ayub. And before I come to that, let me inform my good friend Kaluma, and I know he will allow me because he's my good friend, that he said that media reported that there is nothing that is being done in this region. It is not media that reported, it is some people who said that there is nothing the president is coming to launch from this end. And while they were saying that, Ayub, the road that passes their gate has been done by President William Ruto. A good example is the road that the president, the head of state, mentioned that starts from a place called Kwamboi, Wamunyoro, to Karandi. That road passes through the gate of the former deputy president. It has been done, and I want to confirm as the MP for this area, it has been done by President William Samoei Ruto, and I want that to be on record. And secondly, Makali has said that we compare the photos of Baba Raila Odinga when he came to Nyeri last. I want to refute those claims and tell Makali Mulu that those photos they were posting last night, there is nowhere Raila Odinga did such kind of a meeting in Nyeri. The photo I saw them circulating was in Nairobi. So, Makali Mulu, I see you have joined the lying squad that keep on lying. And last night, you people were posting fake photos. Those photos were not from Nyeri. Coming to the question, the president does not need to visit every region for development to happen in those regions, but it is his right and his constitutional mandate to visit every region of this country. And we have seen him in Nyanza. We have seen him in Nairobi, in Western, in Northeastern. Actually, the president said that since elections, he has not visited Northeastern. It is for the first time that he visited Northeastern since he was elected. But development was going on, Ayub. So it doesn't mean that the president has to visit every region for development to happen. The development happens. What happens? The president just needs to inspect, because as I told you, the buck stops with him. And as the CEO, at one time he will be asked, what are you doing in Northeastern? Which road are you doing in Northeastern? And it is his responsibility to answer which road are you doing in Northeastern. And I think it is at this time that Makali Mulu needs to invite the head of state to his constituency to look at what they are doing, because the President William Ruto, no one can stop him from visiting the constituency that Makali Mulu represents. So the development goes on even if the president is not there. As you said, but
Honorable Eric, how many projects then will he inspect here, given that he's a political animal in the end who will need some votes from some regions and all the regions in the country? How many can he visit at the same time? And doesn't that then erode the notion that there is vested mandate in institutions to undertake this without necessarily inviting the head of state to inspect these projects?
I agree with you. For example, in this region, there are hundreds and hundreds of projects. The president will not visit all of them. For example, there is the complete Marikiti market in Karatina, which I saw people saying that there is no new market in Karatina. There is a market in Karatina, which is complete. The president is not going to visit because it is not in his schedule. He is going now to come again in August and continue with the inspection of projects. There are hundreds of projects, but the president is not going to visit all of them. There are hundreds of projects going on in Nyanza region. When the president visited Nyanza region, he did not inspect all of them. When the president visited Northeastern region, he did not inspect all the projects. It is just his responsibility to tour regions and getting to know what is the status progress of Mau Road, what is the status progress of Keno Marwa Road, what is the status progress of markets. For example, Ayub, we saw the president in Laikipia opening 9 schools done by national government, not NGCDF, in Laikipia West. Those schools were closed because of insecurity. So the security was restored, schools were built, and it was the responsibility of the head of state to go and open those schools because they were closed down because of insecurity. So it doesn't mean that the president has to open and launch all the projects. We have seen ministers like Rigathi Gachagua and the other ministers commissioning and launching projects. We have seen the minister for transport visiting different areas, launching construction of different roads. We have seen the deputy president, who is now a sober principal assistant to the head of state, moving to all regions, commissioning and launching different projects. So the president is just coming to polish up what other institutions have done.
All right.
The deputy president, who is his principal assistant, the ministers, the institutions, they are all out there making sure that projects are ongoing.
Okay, and Honorable Peter Pondo Kaluma, if you look at the mosaic of development spread across the country, of course, there is a gross sense of inequity, given systematic state exclusions, if you look at some regions of the country. But then are we progressing from that direction to properly undertake our development projects that reflect equity, or are we turning into a nation where political visits in a nation is largely tied to development in this regard and not cutting off that old tradition of exclusion?
Ayub, let me address the matter of the budget-making process, which should then inform what developments you undertake before I address the matter of implementation of development. Our Constitution says that the budgeting authority is in Parliament. But Makali will confirm to you, having served in Budget Committee, I think, for over 10 years.
Still a member. Are you still a member, Honorable?
Yes, he's still a member.
You have been duly again.
It confirms how fair we are in broad-based government.
You have my choice. I'm giving it to me.
Yes, but the Constitution says the budgeting authority is in Parliament. But the fact of the matter is that a major plank of budgeting is initiated, and in terms of even the estimates, are originally, done within the executive, in the National Treasury. That is where the budgets for all ministries, the departments of government, the various sectors are negotiated and figures put on them. In fact, Ayub, let me tell Kenyans that by the time the budget estimates are coming to Parliament, they are so locked and they have such ceilings that Parliament, in spite of being the budgeting authority, cannot change much. You can move money within a sector, but you cannot blow out or go beyond what is priorly negotiated and set by the executive in the budget. And remember, when we are talking about the executive, you know the head of the executive. Number two, Parliament does the work it does. But after that, the money goes to the executive. And the president is the chief executive officer of the state. The executive arm of government is then to implement. You've seen people asking, even on social media, Kaluma, tell us what you've done for Homa Bay Town. And they consider me rude when I tell them, it is not my work to do those things you call material development. Ask President Ruto. That is true. It is the executive that then implements the various material developments, we need around. Kaluma will say this money should go to education, but it is the executive. And ideally, it should be President Ruto doing everything. Let me tell you, that is the idea.
Why do you say so?
Yes. I'm still talking with you in terms of the law.
Okay.
As the chief executive officer, if it were possible, I can tell you, then he should be the one ideally doing everything. But we understand the country is big. We understand the sectors and ministries are many, and the needs of the people are varied. And you cannot leave all that to a single person called the president to be doing it. And because of that, we have systems through which we have delegated the power of the president to various officers within the executive to support him. What am I telling you in terms of law? That the president remains the principal. These people are delegates exercising executive authority. And in most cases, you know, there are people he appoints, if you leave aside his principal assistant, who is the deputy president. So I'm saying this, Ayub, to explain to Kenyans that it is not something unexpected that the president should be visiting places. In fact, if it were possible that the president can be everywhere at the same time, and that is the ideal situation. And let me therefore go to the question you are asking. Why do we have skewed development? And are we seeing, you know, much more? I can tell you even under President Uhuru, to a large extent under President Kibaki, where the executive came from in their largest numbers, always got more development. I can tell you it is a very unfortunate situation. Currently, you see even how, you know, cabinet secretaries are shared across the country. Up to the time we went to broad-based government, I don't know which cabinet secretary was coming from the entire Luo Nyanza. I imagine none. And you know that is unconstitutional.
Owalo was.
Yeah, Owalo was, I think, in charge of ICT, and let me say he did some good work. But you go to, you know, the core ministries, okay, which immediately matter to people. The ministry in charge of roads, the ministry in charge of energy, the ministry which relate to finance and dictate how resources go. They have been in particular regions. And these regions, in terms of real development, as you rightly say, have gotten very skewed and favorable development against the others. And that is why, personally, I want to encourage President Ruto to be traveling more. Do I tell you, Ayub, that since I became a member of parliament, not an inch of new tarmac has been seen in Homa Bay town.
You were elected in 2013?
I can tell you.
It's your third.
And I'm budgeting, I'm in parliament for 13 years. And you ensure there is money for roads, but nothing at all to date. Yet, Makali will tell you, we had an issue with the budget committee the other day. And of course, we are now where we are. We were asking them as budget committee, how come when even opinion polls are done, it is just members of budget committee you see from position 1 to, except Makali and a few. The fact of the matter is that when the president moves around as the chief executive, he is able to ask, how come we gave money or we were given money to implement such work and people are complaining about Mau roads? How come Homa Bay town constituency is part of Kenya, yet there is no single road, there is no electricity? I can tell you,
yes.
Homa Bay town, as part of the larger Homa Bay county, will be hosting Madaraka Day this year, and we want to welcome everybody to that Madaraka Day. Even before the president comes, because he's the chief executive, the roads we've been crying for are being done in Homa Bay. A stadium is being, done properly. And you remember stadia were being done by the executive across, but in Homa Bay we were struggling using our county funds. You know what I mean? So a lot is happening. Let us encourage the president. In fact, Ayub, let me end by saying, I mourn these people who are saying the president should be somewhere in the office just seated. The president cannot be in the office seated. The president has people using his delegated authority to implement development across the country. And I think the best thing any president should be doing is to travel across from Mount Kenya, go to Lower Eastern, go to Kambani, go to Coast, and check that the people your authority has been delegated to and the people you've appointed are actually serving the Kenyan people. Otherwise, you'll have those cases of corruption we've been talking about.
Okay, so, but still you sit in a house where all this budgeting process is done, allocation of the money, and by extension we'll be talking about the budgeting process because that's where also there are a lot of loopholes to be fixed. This must come into you. should development then be, should development not be driven by data, by transparency and continuity than episodic visits by the head of state? In this case, Mount Kenya, he was in northeastern Kenya, he was in the coast, he was in Luo Nyanza, he was in western Kenya, by extension the entire western Kenya. And every region this much, from your observation, had its own fair share of a political narrative that the president had a soft landing spot for. What does this translate to?
That is the biggest challenge we face in Kenya, right from independence, that so-called development is personality-driven. So from what the members of the National Assembly are saying, that their work at the National Assembly, the budget-making process, is merely ceremonial, and they're ticking a box. That this thing is personality-based. Like, for instance, if you look at the roads sector in Kenya, somebody will tell you that, in fact, we have a roads policy in Kenya. But there's no roads policy in Kenya. It's at the pleasure of the national government. Wherever they want roads, that's where you are going to have the roads. The members of the National Assembly will pass the budget, they will interrogate the relevant documentation, but it's at the pleasure of the president. That is why at some stage when President Moi was head of state, we were told that there were so many roads in parts of Rift Valley, and people would use the tarmac roads to dry their maize. While there are parts in central Kenya, fresh produce is rotting in the farms because there are no roads. There are parts in Kenya where farmers, like in Kisii, they need to take their tea or coffee to the factories. They cannot access because there are no roads. So one wonders, when are the members of the National Assembly going to create systems and infrastructure so that the president does not need to visit a particular region for us to have equity and equality in the distribution of the natural and national resources? It's really a tragedy that for you to see development, for you to touch development, the president has to come to your region. The way Honorable Kaluma has indicated, that for the longest time, his constituents has not seen a kilometer of tarmac. But right now, at the end of the president, when he goes after Madaraka Day, probably you're going to have 130 kilometers. It's a tragedy. So what happens if the president does not visit Elwak Mandera? What happens if the president does not visit Mosocho? Does it mean that the people are just going to sit under a mango tree and wait for these programs to come? In fact, in my view, what Honorable Kaluma, Honorable Mulu, and Honorable Mumbi are indicating, that Parliament has run away from its responsibility because they are the ones who are in charge of resources. They have to ensure that these resources are used in a manner that reflects equity and equality. And then earlier on, a pertinent point that we must look at, and Musalia Mudavadi spoke about this, about the cost of public participation. So we invest a lot of resources in public participation, hoping that this public participation is going to influence distribution of resources. It comes to zero. In my view, what the Auditor General must do as a matter of urgency is do a very specific audit. Like, for instance, what is the cost of launching all these projects? What is the cost of commissioning all these projects? And what is the cost of political branding? When you see all these projects which have been initiated, especially people with the string, the presidency as well as governors, if you do a casual drive through the entire of Kenya, everywhere you go, there's a big billboard of the local MCA, a big billboard of the local governor saying this project has been brought to you by this personality. Well, in fact, we know that these are taxpayer resources. And for the unsuspecting Alima, unsuspecting Wanjiko, unsuspecting Mora, they've been misled to believe that these are personal resources from these politicians. You may be surprised to learn that the cost of launching these projects, the cost of commissioning these projects, the cost of this political branding is probably much higher than the cost of the actual project. We've seen governors who spend maybe 5 million in a project, but the cost of launching it could be as much as 100 million because they want to have a lot of razzmatazz. And you know, razzmatazz is what sells in the political space. Because as Kaluma has indicated, if you've got a project, or even as Omumbi has indicated, you've got a project, and the president does not launch it, then they don't take political credit. Okay.
And Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu, before we go to Honorable Wamumbi, how then do we move away from, for example, the case in point given here by Honorable Peter Pondo Kaluma, for the president to visit the region, then some expansion of the road should be done, the airstrip should be worked on because it's national celebration. Does it not reinforce the notion that development is a political reward than a constitutional obligation and a right?
You know, Ayuba, quite some fundamental issues are coming from this debate, and I'm very, very happy that as panelists we're actually discussing these issues. But before I get to the issues, let me just confirm to my colleague Wamumbi that if there is anybody who talks the reality on the ground, it is Makali Mulu. I never lie. And I can't join the club of liars. And I'm sure he knows who are the liars in Kenya.
You're not a member of the lying squad.
Yeah, I'm not a member of the lying squad. He knows who are the lying squad. But you have raised a very important issue, Ayub, and I really want us to focus on the issue.
Yeah.
The issue of equity in sharing national resources. You know, when the president visits an area, and Kaluma has confirmed that now that he's visiting Homa Bay during the Madaraka Day, that visit was supposed to be to my constituency, Kitui Central, but it has been moved to Kaluma, and you can hear the kind of goodies he's listing, which is going to gain. The question is, Ayubu.
You are going to host Mashujaa.
When the president, that might be a topic for another day.
Granted,
and for your information, by the way, Ayub, the president has visited Ukambani about 3 times. But what has happened, he only visits us on Sundays to attend church services. I'm not downplaying the issue of attending church because I'm a Christian. But I'm saying when you attend church, you can't be asked questions. You can't sit to plan a church visit because development issues, you say I'm coming to worship. So how I wish he comes to Kambani and we plan the way the other regions are planning in terms of development. But Wamumbi should note that the president has visited us about 3 times. Even in Gachagua came to my constituency twice. The president was in my constituency once, but we were worshiping.
They never spent the night there?
No, they came in the morning. You worship of 1 hour and a half, and they left. So we are still waiting for the visit to come. But to me, all said and done, budgeting is in the house.
Okay.
It's our mandate. The only problem we have is, now, there's a new item which has been introduced in our budgeting process, which is not supposed to be there, called presidential directives. So that when the president goes to Homa Bay, goes to Nyeri, there are things he's going to promise people there, which are not in the budget. And at the end of the day, somebody will be coming to the budget committee, talking to the chair, telling the chair, we have these presidential directives which must be factored into the budget. And that's where the problem is. When we are doing the budget...
So who is the person who comes? A member of the budget committee?
No, not a member of the budget committee, the executive. Either PS will be saying, when the president visited Nyeri, he promised a level 4 hospital. On the basis of that, I need to factor in that level 4 hospital into the budget of the Minister of Health.
So that is outside the normal budgeting process?
Now, that's why I want to explain to you where the issue is.
Okay.
And I think this is a serious issue. We must take it serious. Now, what happens? When we are doing a national budget, the so-called annual estimates, the things you do, and this is Treasury now, before it goes to the ministries, you look at the world economy and say, this year, the economy is projected to grow by this. Currently, we are now doing the budgets. The projected growth, international growth now, is about 3.3%. Then you come to Sub-Sahara economy. You say Sub-Sahara is supposed to grow by this level. Then you come to Kenyan economy, which means there's a lot of data which has been analyzed before you even come to Kenyan economy. And it's on the basis of that, then you project your macroeconomic parameters like inflation, interest rates, foreign exchange reserves, foreign exchange, all those things. So it is a process. So when the president goes to an area and says, I promise this area, I'll give them a road worth 4 billion, a road. Nobody has subjected that additional budget allocation to the things I've mentioned. So it means you are destabilizing the whole budgeting process. At that point, when you are doing your budget now, we have agreed on what we call the budget deficit. Currently, we have agreed is going to be about 4.6%. Now, when the president promises 4 billion additional, nobody has looked at the impact of that to the budget deficit, which means you're even now increasing the budget deficit. And that's why you see, when we are starting the year, we say we'll borrow 4.5. Closure of the year, we have borrowed 5.6% of the budget. So these are the critical issues. So we are saying, while we appreciate that the president should be visiting,
yes,
if I were the president, what I would be doing when I'm visiting Nyeri, because the budget is supposed to be done at the national level, I would be asking my PSO, my CS, what has been allocated in the budget for the region I'm visiting, so that the president will not be talking about projects which are already factored into the budget. That is not what is happening.
Okay.
And now what has been happening for areas like ours,
Yes.
why we are crying,
Yeah.
the few projects which get into the budget at the annual estimate
Yes.
get reduced at the supplementary budget.
Okay. Honorable Eric Wamumbi, does this also lay bare the failure by Parliament in considering some of these issues during the budgeting process? That is the house where you sit in, instead of rather waiting for the omnipresence of the president, an almighty president who is all round, must visit all the 290 constituencies. Yet this is a matter that you can handle at the National Assembly level.
No, Ayub, and before I come to that, let me remind Makali Mulu that when the president visited the Ukambani region, he said clearly that Ukambani people belong to Kenya and they are entitled to development. And he justified why he gave them a cabinet secretary. Makali Mulu, what did the former deputy president say? He said in front of your eyes that you don't deserve anything. He said you are not shareholders. He said you don't deserve a cabinet secretary. He insulted you. He told you you only have 1.5 million votes, which cannot take anyone anywhere. That's what he said in front of your eyes, if you have forgotten. He insulted you, and that is the man now you are following blindly, the man who insulted your people, the man who said you don't belong to this country, the man who said you don't deserve anything in this government because you have no shares. And Ayub, that is what the president has dismantled. He has said every region of this country deserves development because they are the people of Kenya. The people of Ukambani are people of Kenya. The people of Northeastern, where Kaluma comes from, are people of Kenya, and they deserve roads, they deserve water projects, they deserve electricity, they deserve better schools. And President joining all leaders of this country, all people of this country together, it is because he wants to kill the culture of if you vote for the government, you enjoy development. If you don't, you suffer for the rest of 5 years. We have seen the president bringing the entire country together and saying, regardless of how you voted, you deserve roads, you deserve electricity, you deserve water projects, you deserve better schools, you deserve markets. Every single constituency of this country, whether you supported the president or not, Ayub, and Makali Mulu is there, has been allocated 50 million Kenya shillings to make sure that there is connection of electricity in every single constituency, including Makali Mulu's. He has been allocated 50 million. So it doesn't matter. And that is the equalization we talked about in Parliament, that even if the people where Makali Mulu comes from did not vote for President William Ruto, they deserve electricity. And the responsibility of Parliament was to make sure that Makali Mulu has been allocated 50 million.
But you know the money was removed.
That he has been he has been allocated 50 million. Yes, every single constituency you can ask Kaluma has been allocated 50 million.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean then that we as Parliament are incapacitated, and we agreed with the president that that money has to be allocated. Ayub, every single constituency of this country is receiving 64 million, every constituency, for road construction, to make sure that the farmers, milk farmers, can access markets at the right time. So it doesn't matter whether you voted, and that money is appropriated by Parliament.
Okay, and so I get your point. Honorable Wamumbi, I get your point. As you proceed to the next question, Honorable Makali, is that clear? Is that verdict? What's the verdict of that?
You know what I'm saying? Kenya? What I'm saying, Ayub, and I think Wamumbi now confirms he belongs to the club of the lie. I don't know where he was in Parliament. This money was all removed after failure of the finance bill. This money is not in the budget. I don't know where he sits. And that's why we were saying, some of us,
but it's you who removed it,
we talk
removed,
based on the best. When he talks about roads money, 54 million, unless it's in Madeira, where else is it in? The other day we had that argument, and you witnessed that, in the House, where we were saying some constituencies have billions of worth of roads, and Kaluma has just confirmed, while others have zero. So I don't know which house Wamumbi sits in.
So it is then your responsibility,
confirming what we were saying earlier,
as a member of Parliament, to lobby for projects in your constituency. Then it shows you are an incompetent MP if you cannot be able to knock doors and lobby for projects, what we have allocated as Bunge is there.
The budget committee.
It is your responsibility then to follow those projects and make sure they are done.
Okay, before I come to Honorable Peter Opondo Kaluma, and Honorable Omumbi, you have mentioned about the former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, who you do represent in Parliament, given that he's one of your constituents.
Yes.
How much of a blame should the President shoulder in this case, given that he's the man who handpicked him against the democratic vote of the MPs who voted for Professor Abraham Kithure Kindiki as his running mate in 2022?
I think the President answered that, and he explained why he picked him against the wishes of members of Parliament, of the former Parliament. And he explained that he wanted Amze, because he was being accused to work with young leaders, the likes of Ndede Nyoro, good friend, Kimani Ichung'wah, Kawanjiko, young people, and he wanted to bring on board Amze just to make it look better, but he didn't know, he was only being a good person. He didn't know that the reason why members of Parliament, of the 12th Parliament, had rejected him is because they knew him, they worked with him. Members of Parliament worked with the former Deputy President as the MP. So they knew him better, maybe, and they had seen how he behaves. I think the President explained that, and I don't want to delve too much into that discussion, because the President explained why he picked him, and he explained he was rejected by the former Parliament. He has been rejected by this Parliament.
And given that you are byproduct of a democracy, and also the President, and also Makali, and also Honorable Peter Opondo Kaluma, and the President has shown principles he said must be adhered to of democratic outcomes, why do you think he overlooked and knee-jerked the reaction, the outcome at the time that the professor should be his running mate?
I really, Ayub, don't want to delve too much into that conversation, but I have told you, the President explained to the MPs, fine, you have voted. Kithure Kindiki got 27 votes. My good friend got 5 votes, but he told them, now, look, guys, this is a situation. I am being accused of working with young leaders. There is this Mzee, who is almost, who is of my age. I plead with you, kindly allow me to work with him. If there are any challenges, we will handle them as we move on. So I think the President really explained that matter, and I really plead with you, Ayub, that I don't speak too much about that issue.
One final question on the same, because it's an accountability show. What other factor, other than age and the optics, might you think have persuaded the President to work with Gachagua?
President explained. He mentioned about age. The President said about age. He didn't say about anything else. And you know, it is one who picked. It's not me who. I don't know what he looked at. Yeah. It was his appointee. It was not my nominee. So the President said he looked at the age only. So he would maybe find out about the other characters as they moved on. He only mentioned about age.
Fair enough.
He didn't talk about competency.
Fair enough.
We'll have some outing with the President. We'll ask him about that. Yes, Honorable Kaluma.
Yes. Now, Ayub, let me help Wamumbi because of the situation where he is. I served with former Deputy President Gachagua in Parliament for 5 years. And I think we did with Makali. And I can't remember any pro-people thing or anything I can remember Gachagua for in terms of his contributions on the floor. And if there is, I'll request Makali to tell us. Yeah. Also, Pell is an MP who never came to Parliament. And remember, the only time he spoke was when they were removed towards the end of Parliament from the plum committees which they were in, without any service you can talk about to others. And you remember, Ayub, when President Ruto mentioned Gachagua as his running mate, we were in this station. We went then to K24. I was at KTN. We were at NTV. I think...
You actually had a show with him.
We had a show. And if you go back to YouTube, you'll find them there. I went laughing, asking what, President Ruto, as a candidate then, so in Gachagua, against all the options, he had, if you get it, I analyzed even the other options he had, including Kindiki, Moses Wetangula, there was Musalia Mudavadi, there was, the speaker, the former speaker, Justin Muturi, all who were handling and available to him. They said, this is a tragedy. And so I'm one person who was, never surprised that Gachagua could not serve a full term as a DP. In fact, the impeachment of Gachagua, to me, is among the easiest parliamentary decisions I personally had to make. But let me, emphasize something, just to clarify what Makali is saying. Number one, we've been complaining about the inefficiencies and, in our view, the incapacities of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, where Makali has, of course, been, serving. Ayub, there is something President Ruto is doing. And let me tell you, cumulatively, even though he's operating in a very constrained environment, if he continues the way he is continuing, this country will be shocked at how development has been spread and how much development he would have, secured to be done in his term. You go to Northeastern and you get people saying, oh, President Ruto is saying, nitatoa barabara hapa, nitaenda hapa, and they take it lightly. Some work is going on. He'll go to Homa Bay and he'll, say we are doing Gor Mahia Road, we are doing Ojijoteko Road. You think it is not being done. I can tell you, if you look across the country, cumulatively, this country is being, transformed. My wish were that, President Ruto were able to move much more, and the resources of the country were better. We are in a situation where I don't know whether Makali will confirm to you or otherwise. We are now talking about 50 million being given to constituency, which was initially actually given, but because of the constrained economy with the collapse of the finance bill then, the budget committee, guided us to drop it because it could not be done. But do you remember in the parliament, Makali, where we were with Moses Kuria, we were with, Rigathi Gachagua, MPs would stand on public podia and say, any MP who does not have a transformer, I can donate more. I've hit over 100% coverage. Remember Moses Kuria, you remember, these people. People were, deliberately skewed development, to their sides. And that is why I tell you, sometimes you can get people saying, oh, why are these political arrangements necessary? But I tell you, Makali, it ensures equity. Do I tell you, are you...
As you finish up, yes.
Yes, as I finish. In the composition of the leadership of committees in Parliament alone, and now you've known the powers of committees in terms of directing resources within their mandate. Out of the 25 substantive committees, 12 of the biggest co-economy committees were held by people from one region. Even as we speak, Makali, who is the chair of the committee in charge of roads, infrastructure and transport? Who is the chair of the committee in charge of energy? Who is the chair of the committee in charge of, finance and, planning? Remember, these same people from one region were also the chair of budget and appropriations. The chair of, up to 12 of them, okay? And so when we come up and say, we are in a presidential system, open up so that we can have the competences of all MPs compete to lead. And so that we have spread, we take it for granted. But some of these things are good in terms of, progressing our state forward. There is something that Makali Mulu said, that at times a minister or a PS as an accounting officer will come and say the president has requested this. I started by saying, number one, is the chief executive of the country. Number two, being the chief executive, he has a right to then look, because remember, mostly when budget comes...
How do you then budget for that?
And we pass it. Now remember, when we budget, for instance, for education, we seldom say, this is to Homa Bay Primary or Ndiru Primary. The allocation of these monies is then left to the ministry or to the department or sector.
Okay.
What if the president goes and finds that you have a budget, Honorable Makali, the president visits Kitui, and he finds the budget committee where Makali is a member, Kaluma is not a member. You gave a blank budget, and this budget has been directed to one area as he was complaining about.
Okay.
Isn't the president in his right place to say, no, I'm the chief executive and the head of state for the entire country, but this must be done. And what is wrong? What is wrong then?
Yes.
The president telling it to the delegates I told you about, the PSS and others, and for the delegate to go to the Budget and Appropriations Committee to say, when the president moved around, he found things skewed. He is saying this must be put.
Tell me,
ultimately, Ayub, it is for the consideration and decision of the Budget Committee whether it happens.
Okay. So power is vested in Parliament, you agree with me, on budgeting and allocation?
Yes.
And that the president is also subject to accountability and cannot therefore make roadside declarations to be low, as was the case under the previous dispensation and the times of President Moi's administration. But I'm glad you mentioned that this power is vested in that specific committee, because Parliament works by virtue of committees and the independence of it. Dismas, talking about this and how we have set up the aspect of fairness and transparency, are we rather making a right for Kenyans to get their fair share of development and resources look like a privilege, and that tied to whoever is occupant at State House?
Honorable Makali Mula has just confirmed that at the Budget and Appropriation Committees, when they receive presidential directives from the accounting officers,
they say yes, sir.
They say yes, sir, and they review the budget. So it appears that, and you indicated that this is an accountability show. It appears that the members of the National Assembly are not accountable to the citizens. They are not accountable to the laws that they pass. They are not accountable to the infrastructure which has been created for equality and equity. Because if at the drop of a hat, they have to review their allocations, they have to dance to the whims of the presidency, then one wonders, why in fact do you need to have a budget committee? What is the purpose of a budget committee if you sit through the year, come up with a piece of legislation, but at the drop of a hat, they're incumbent, they cannot move? It therefore means that we've gone back to the era where systems and infrastructure does not work. That if there's an overbearing, say, president, then everything is going to be done to his drumbeats. And then it's very painful that one of the panelists does not seem to understand how the National Assembly works. Because the honorable member from Madira, Eric Wamumbi, has pointed out to some allocations which are not, in fact, in the budget, and is representing his people at the National Assembly. So you wonder...
No, they were there.
If you are a member of the National Assembly...
They were there. They were just
had it not been...
yeah, but they were removed, but it's not alive to the fact that they have been removed. You would expect him to be on top of the issue. So as it is right now, Ayub, it appears that Kenyans are on their own, and the members of the National Assembly must go the extra mile to ensure that as an arm of government, their works stand for something. Because you cannot spend an entire year, come up with a budget, and then you get a presidential directive, and that directive then has the responsibility or has got the effects of moving funds from one place to another. Mm-hmm. We started off talking about equity and equality. If you look at the healthcare infrastructure in Kenya, a preliminary analysis will indicate that they're concentrated in one county. There is one county in Kenya which has got a high concentration of healthcare facilities. Okay. It therefore means that other places like in Kisii, you don't have that superior thing. When you talk about roads policy, so the roads policy, it's at the whim of the presidency. So one will ask, Honorable Kaluma has indicated that everything comes from the National Treasury. But when he sits at the National Assembly, does he not have capacity to question all those pronouncements to see whether or not they reflect equality and equity? Having been a member of the National Assembly for 13 years representing the constituency, Is there evidence that he actually went the extra mile to go to the top of Mount Kenya or Everest and make noise that I'm receiving a raw deal? Because if you don't do that and you just watch events unfold, then Kenyans will begin to wonder, what is the role of the member of the National Assembly?
You never watch me in Parliament.
Well, we can get back to the Hansard.
Ayub, Ayub, I think
we need also to touch on
some things are easier
statements made by
some things are easier said than done. Eh? You know, I think this is very much aware of our governance structure. That in Parliament, the majority will always have their way, the minority will have their voice. I can tell you, if you go to the Hansard, nothing which has been said we have never said. We say them. But the problem is, you have a chair who has been appointed, not elected, by the same executive. So when he gets instructions that do 1, 2, 3, what do you do? More likely you do what it takes. There are times we have even had budget committee reports changed. What you agree at the committee level is not what go to the House. At that time, you don't have the numbers to change. You have to make an amendment. So we are saying, what has happened? Just a normal executive capture. And we have talked about this many times. I'm a member of Parliament. But any time we talk about Parliament, I always ask myself, are we talking about an ideal Parliament, or are we talking about Kenyan Parliament, where we know what is happening in there? Because if we really talk about Kenyan Parliament, we'll change the way we analyze some of these issues. The other thing is a requirement, a constitutional requirement, that for budgets to pass, we need public participation. When the president goes to Homa Bay and says, I'm giving you a level 4 hospital, where is public participation? At that time, as he factored in, after the hospital is constructed, how many doctors shall we require for that hospital? What equipment will be required? Where will it come from? Because it's a default function. Now, you have hospitals all over the country, which are actually shells. Because what has happened is they have been constructed using national government money, but the person who's supposed to equip them is a governor. The governor doesn't have those resources because equitable share money they are getting is so little. So you find it's a very complicated, and that's what I'm saying. If I were the president, I'll consider, even before you make a decision, what is in the, because once something is factored in the budget, then it triggers a process all the way to the governor level. The governor will know, I have a level 4 hospital which has been planned for my area. On that basis, you start planning for drugs, for human resource, for equipment.
And
but when you just announce...
function, is it? It's still accounting.
It is a devolved function.
Okay.
Ayub, can I rebut on...
Because he has been
just before you go to him. You know, Makali, we've been with you in Parliament since the 11th Parliament, for 13 years now.
Yes.
There is an approach that President Ruto has adopted, which I can tell you is very good.
Which is?
He meets leaders from a region. Last week alone, you remember the president met leaders from the larger company. He met leaders from Homa Bay County. He met leaders from, Western. And so that you may see President Ruto going somewhere and saying, we want this. It comes from a discussion and consultations with the leaders in terms of their needs. The first time I met President Ruto, I found him meeting the governors instead of waiting for the DP alone to be meeting them and reporting to him. And what I want to therefore request Honorable Makali is that when the president calls your region leadership to go and meet him, go and meet him. He's calling you as a head of state.
But who has been called?
You may be politically on different sides, huh? But just go and meet him, because that is the point. That is the point.
This is the question I'm asking. Yes,
Ayub, just give me a second.
Okay.
State House is not a walk-in, walk-out place. You must go there on appointment and when you have been invited. In a situation where there is selective invitation,
have you sought meeting?
Where would Kaluma expect us to go?
No.
Why would I seek a meeting to go to the State House?
This is the question I'm asking. Your
budget is done at Parliament.
Point
yes.
Of leaders meeting the head of state at State House.
Yes.
What's the net effect, and is it not inconsequential when it will all come down to Parliament, where, say, for example, the leadership of Ukambani met the head of state, but the budget-making process will come to a point where Parliament has been granted the powers to even amend the budget itself through the 4 key thematic areas of including adoption and formulation. What's the net effect? Why would you need to meet the president?
Let me tell you, I told you the president is the head of the executive. As the president who implements with the executive the budget. And I told you also that initially, it is the executive that will say what we demand, for instance, under the sector of education. is this. If you just left it to MPs, it will not work out. And that is why I'm telling you, the president makes requests to Parliament, because the ultimate decision, of course, is in Parliament. And that is why I'm telling you, the Budget and Appropriations Committee under Makali has been weak. What is Parliament? What they are treating
is a representation of Parliament.
No, please.
Our report goes to Parliament.
Remember, Ayub, this Budget Committee, we nearly disbanded all of it. Because this is the only committee established in the Constitution. And the only committee of Parliament whose mandate is set there. You cannot, for instance, amend if something were to be proposed unless there is prior approval and a resolution of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, both under the Constitution and under the standing orders. So it is easy for the committee within a committee to say, move this money here, move it there. I can tell you if Kaluma moved an amendment, number one, you will be told it has not come from the Treasury and it has not been passed by the Budget and Appropriations Committee. And that is the law. Where I'm making emphasis on is that the Budget and Appropriations Committee should not treat requests from the various heads of the executive, whether they are portrayed as coming from the president or otherwise, as directives. It is a request. It is a request because ultimately they know unless Parliament, initially through the Budget and Appropriations Committee, says yes, it will not be done. But let us avail ourselves of meetings to discuss, because whatever discussions you have with the president will inform what the accounting officers then bring in terms of estimates for approval by Parliament. And where Makali, the president has not invited you, like the meeting we had as Homa Bay leaders with the president, we asked for it. And he just say, there are things we want to discuss with you around the development of Homa Bay County. Okay. Not just Madaraka. Call the president to a table.
Are you forgetting you are in the broad-based government yourselves?
No, not necessarily.
Does the political climate favor you?
Yeah, we are not in the broad-based government.
Would you have met him?
You've asked a question, huh? You can meet the president any day.
Oh, Kaluma.
By the way,
I've been with this Kaluma for the last 13 years in Parliament. It is only this year he's talking the way he's talking. I've been with him 13 years in Parliament.
Ayub, the question you are asking is a very serious question.
Yes. Can I get
whether it is because we are in broad-based government or otherwise?
Yes.
You know, there is this misconception being sung to Kenyans by the media and people who do not know well, that there are some people in government, there are others who are not in government.
No, that's a fact.
You even come to the media and you get very, very sharp people. You remember, like, the so-called opposition leaders are now calling themselves opposition leaders. And you see even the newspaper saying opposition leaders. We don't have an opposition in the country. The situation is that everybody is in government. So you know, Makali, you know, designating some broad-based,
Kaluma, we have been with you in Parliament.
He's just excluding himself from
I know you.
Titled.
He has been silent for some time.
We are all in government.
Coming to you.
Yes.
Will this trip by the president to central Kenya settle the question of who is the king in the mountain?
Thank you, Ayub. And in support of Kaluma, we, the people of this region, we are perceived to be in government. And you saw I had a problem with our governor, Governor Mutahi Kahiga, when he skipped the State House meeting with the Central Kenya governors. I called him out and I asked him, why have you missed to attend the Head of State meeting at State House? Because Ayub, these things don't just happen.
I was invited.
Things are lobbied. And in such meetings is where there is a follow-up of do you have a county aggregate and industrial park? What is the status progress of, for example, Udaya Hospital? You know, in such meetings is where lobbying is done, and I want to support Kaluma that even if you're in government or not, when a meeting is called by the head of state, it's your responsibility to attend. And because now there you will have time to prosecute your case.
Is it a must to attend the meeting convened by the head of state?
No, it's your choice. If you don't want to attend, it's your choice. You will explain to your people then. If you attend, it's a choice, Ayub. It's a choice you make. And when Governor Kahiga did not attend, we called him out. And you saw him yesterday. He came. He joined us, and he said he's the governor of Nyeri. It is his responsibility to receive the president. And this month, I said that there was an allocation of 50 million to every constituency until it was dropped down during the events of finance bill, and you can see the losses we underwent when, and there are so many others, projects that were dropped, and this is due to the dropping of the finance bill. Coming back to your question.
Yes.
Come again. Kindly repeat the question, Ayub.
Yes. Will this visit by the head of state settle the question of who is the king in the mountain?
Very good. Very good. It is not about who is the king in this region. And actually, we don't want to do the discussion about who is the king. The question we are asking ourselves as the region, as the people of this region, is when are our roads going to be done? When are our water projects going to be done? When are our markets going to be done? And giving you a good example, Ayub, in Laikipia, President William Ruto has done the first market at the cost of 350 million since independence. Laikipia County has seen the first market with President William Ruto. That's the discussion we want to have as a region. This discussion about who is the king, who is the kingpin, who is the queenpin, we have realized that that discussion doesn't help us. We want the discussion around development, the Mau Mau roads, the Kenomarwa roads, the markets, the stadiums, the irrigation water projects. That's the discussion we want to have as the people of Mount Kenya. Okay. It is not about who is the king.
Okay.
We actually don't know which office is that. Who elects anyone to that office? And I remember the deputy president asking, which office is that?
Okay.
The discussion we want as the people of Mount Kenya is not who is the king. The discussion we want is when is Keno-Marwa Road going to be completed?
Thank you.
When are the people affected by its construction going to be compensated?
Okay.
When is Rolengo Stadium going to be done? When is the Mau Mau Road going to be completed? That is a discussion we are having. We have now refused that discussion of the kingship, sijui the mulima, sijui the what. We have now, as the people of this region, and we have agreed that this government is ours.
Thank you.
And we are going to enjoy development, and we are going to make sure that all the roads that are ongoing are going to be completed.
Thank you. Much appreciated. So let's now sample the feedback. The hashtag on X is Citizen Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Here is what you are saying on X. RMA_Kiberenge says the president can do better if he gets down to work and sees political rallies disguised as development tours. There is no economical sense in the president with a costly convoy to commission a tuition block in Laikipia County. The next is from Bob Otieno Owino, who says President William Ruto's first Mount Kenya tour is purely political than development, putting all his eyes on his re-election bid in 2027, he means. Engineer Lazaro says President's Mount Kenya shows politics maturing. We are moving almost to the free democracy where everyone is free to sell their policies, talk to people without booing and heckling just because of divergent opinions. Babu Michael says being in government / making the president visit a particular area is very important for development. As far as Kenyan politics are concerned, I think Kaluma may confirm most development projects in Luo Nyanza were during Raila, Kibaki, Nusu Mkate. Peter Gesura 89 says the president is a symbol of national unity and therefore it is within his constitution mandate, means for him to commission, supervise and launch projects in any part of this country. Gabi Wakasiaka says President Ruto's visit to Mount Kenya is a symbol of trust and collaboration. It presents an opportunity to discuss challenges, assess progress and strengthen ties between government and the region. It's 3 minutes past the top of the hour at 8. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time. Much would have extended to go beyond our discussion. The lady here is standing by for her next show, so we should be out. Thank you, Dismas, for your time. Thanks, Honorable Peter for mounting a rather good appeal. Yeah.
He's a serious supporter of the government.
Give me 1 minute.
Yeah.
You remember before the broad-based government, members elected under the ODM ticket, when they went to see President Ruto, they were vilified by the likes of Kaluma. But now, under the broad-based administration, they're being given a pat on the back.
This is Kaluma man.
Yeah. And number two,
This is Kaluma man.
we must support the philosophy taken by President Ruto on equality and equity in the distribution of the national cake, that it matters not how you vote.
Absolutely.
But if you are a Kenyan, if you are within the territory of Kenya, then you deserve your
Much
cake.
appreciated. Many thanks, gentlemen. We end it at that.
Ayub.
Yes,
Ayub.
yes, Honorable Wamumbi.
Ayub, and the president did not open a tuition block in Laikipia. He opened 9 schools that were closed due to insecurity in Laikipia West.
That can
9
be done by
schools
the
done by
DO
the
of
national
the area.
government.
Thank you, Honorable Wamumbi. Eric, for joining us on the broadcast from Madeira constituency. Much appreciated. Dr. Makali Mulo, thank you. Dismas, thank you.
So much. I can be opened by the DO of the place.
Much appreciated for your time as well. Thanks for joining us here on Daybreak. And your company always appreciated and cherished. Trevor will be here tomorrow morning on the State of the Nation. Till then, good morning.